Hey everybody, it's Josh. I wanted to do a quick video. When I say quick, usually I run my mouth way too long, but I want to help everyone understand, especially those who are either very young in their faith or still seeking. I went 13 years in complete hell. And I wanted a sign from God. I believed there was a God. I believed He intervened in my life at the beginning of those 13 years. At the end of those 13 years, towards the end, I was basically pretty sure that He wouldn't intervene in my life, that He wouldn't show me a sign, that He wouldn't save someone as worthless as me. I had nothing to offer. I was a broken man completely in almost every single way. I was a failed husband, a failed father. I couldn't provide for my family anymore because I was disabled at work. I didn't have a purpose or meaning at all in my life. When God came to me in my time of need, I had the most profound sign I could ever imagine, short of maybe an angel descending from heaven. He sent a doe to come running out of the woods just minutes after I said, I will surrender to you if you just show me a sign. And that doe came running, and that wasn't, that alone would have been, wow, that's amazing. This doe came up and, was just staring at me right when I gave myself to God. No, she bowed her head. She let me come over and pet her. And then she walked down onto the lake shore where I was and walked alongside of me for over an hour. And before I was done with my hike that day, she went slowly into the water, into the lake, about chest high. And this was a very calm day out. And she gazed into the horizon, and a mighty wind picked up as she was gazing out there. She didn't break her gaze out in the horizon. She just stared off into the horizon, and this wind just permeated me. And that was the Holy Spirit coming into me, but I didn't know that. First of all, I'm what you call an idiot. I'm a very slow learner. I lacked a lot of knowledge. I guess I had some common sense, but it was so overtaken by my bitterness. It just didn't mean anything anymore. It was basically worthless too. And everything changed that day. Every single thing. If you've never seen it before and you want to see I have actual footage from that day, including the time when the doe went out into the water and the Holy Spirit came into me. I have that actually on film, on video. But I want to tell you that it's not like something that you're like, I demand a sign. I need a sign right now, or I'm not going to believe, or I'm obviously not worthy because I'm not getting a sign. No, you have to wait. You have to learn patience. Patience is the greatest virtue. It really is. And it's one that all of us lack, especially in America, but really in most of the world these days. We're so used to our comforts and we have to have our movies right now. If our movie's not playing right within 2 seconds, oh man, we're going to throw a fit like a little child. I'm the same way. I know what I'm talking about. I know exactly how you probably are too. Hopefully you're not as bad as I was, but you have to wait for God's time. Because I'm telling you, that sign was just the start of the conversation I had with God. I have had so many more signs, and really, I started thinking about things that had happened in my past, and I was shown them clearly, everything that had happened to me. Just in that one, or I was brought back to a time that almost the exact same place where the deer came to me, where God sent me that doe when I needed it the most. In exactly the same place, I kicked over a rock I would say 5 years before that, maybe, give or take a year. I kicked over a rock and there was a beautiful garnet there, like the gem. It looked like a ruby shining there. And I was just taken aback. And that kicked off a major hobby of mine of just going around rock hounding and finding gems and minerals. And I understand that now that garnet had so much meaning. In the Jewish tradition, the garnet was a huge symbol of Noah when he built his ark. First of all, he built it out of, people don't know this for sure, but a lot of people think he built it out of either cedar or cypress, which cypress trees are very rare around where I was. And I passed, with the deer, we passed 3 crazy looking cypress trees. And we passed a bunch of cedar trees too. In fact, there was one we had to go around because one had fallen down across the shore. The garnet, when Noah was building his ark, he built a window, and supposedly there's traditions where he put the garnet into the window, the little 4x4 foot window, and there was one where he kept it around his neck. But supposedly that garnet illuminated the entire ark, like in a supernatural way, for his entire trip. Now, in Christian tradition, the garnet represents the sacrifice of Christ, the blood sacrifice. It is the passion that burns, the passion of the Christ. But, I passed those cypress and cedar trees in the exact same place. A couple months later, I heard a rustling, and I walked over, and there was a hawk I thought it was stuck, so I was like, oh man, I better go help this hawk. I was thinking I was going to get pecked to death, pecked up pretty bad, but I was like, I can't just let him get stuck on something over there. So I walked over, and the hawk was there with a squirrel. He had a squirrel in its talons. And immediately, I hear something, I look up, and an owl lands right above me. And he's just gazing down at me. The hawk I sat and I was like watching the hawk kill this squirrel for a good 10 to 15 minutes. And then I sat and watched that owl, and the owl was obviously angling for the squirrel too. But these birds, they acted like they didn't even care that I was there. And another time in the exact same place, there's a little creek right around the corner from where I saw this deer. There was a buck. And I walked up along, and this buck was walking, right across. It's a tiny little creek, just a few feet wide. And he was walking right on the other side of me. I could have jumped over and grabbed him if I wanted to. And I was like, wow, this is crazy. And he was walking along, and he let me follow him this time instead of the doe following me. I was following the buck. And I was like, wow, maybe the deer around here are just used to people. And as soon as I started thinking that and getting these doubts in my head, I heard some hikers back behind me. You know, the buck who wasn't worried about me for a good 10, 15 minutes too. He looked up, he saw those hikers, which were, you know, a good 30, 40 feet at least back. No, longer, actually 30, 40 yards probably at least. And back behind a bunch of trees, he took off running. So he heard somebody else. He wasn't worried about me. He heard somebody else and he just took off. I've had dogs who I know are aggressive, who I know are mean and like, you know, will bite people. They run up to me and act like they're the sweetest dogs that can be. You know, I mean, I know there's one dog who barks its head off, and anybody who passes by, they keep the poor dog outside all the time. And when I go by, she lays down and she gets submissive, you know, like that, you know, like that little bowing type look that dogs get. It is nonstop. When I'm doing these videos, I get signs almost every single time. You know, one of the greatest ones was when I was doing a video. I go to there's a little park behind our library that has a little pond where I go to a lot. And when it's a little bit nicer out. But that day it had been spitting rain all day, and you know, storms were coming through, but I caught it right between the storms. I went out there, I started filming, and I noticed it raining. I was like, oh, well, I better wrap up here soon. You know, it's starting to rain. But I was like, why am I not getting wet? I looked, and it was raining on every side of me. And I was, you know, almost completely dry except for a little bit of water that was running off the trees from earlier. It was pouring down rain on all sides of me, at least 3 sides of me. I didn't, you know, the one side I didn't look at, but 3 sides of me of just pouring, like torrential downpours. I was like standing there after I finished the video, and I was like, what is going on? I was like, oh, okay. And then, of course, like you'll see me kind of like stop and get distracted by something, and I'll usually tell you guys what it is. You know, a group of deer came up upon me, you know, several times when I'm doing videos, and just watched me. You know, that's been the biggest sign to deer for me, from God. I have birds land on branches right in front of me. Often there's bluebirds, which are significant to me because they're my Grammy. She used to love watching the bluebirds. That was her favorite bird. And doves. I've talked to my friend TJ over at TJ Tells the Truth. Go check him out. His channel is growing, and he could use your support. You know, it's tough starting out in this, you know, trying to get listeners. So please try to support him. He was telling me about 2 doves that did the same thing. They were right on his, I think he said his like balcony there, and right when he was doing his video. I mean, I never saw a dove like in the vicinity of my house for the longest time until I was saved. I never did. I mean, I'd seen them obviously other places, but I mean, I see doves all the time around my house now. And they're always around me, and they're always like doing something right around me, showing me a sign from God. And just the other day, the latest sign that I was doing my video, and a big blue heron, which those are like, you can look it up, it's like a big crane type bird, and they're blue. A blue heron came and flew, you know, just a couple feet in front of me. And I was paying attention I was looking at the camera, and then I just saw this big flash, and he flew right in front of me. And I was like, oh, wow, blue heron. And then he, you know, usually those things are very elusive, very elusive. They'll get the hell away from you if you're near them. he came flying back around again, and he had a big frog in his mouth. I saw the frog legs hanging out of his mouth, and he got close enough for me to see it in detail. And then he took off over to the other side of the lake. But I was like, this is just incredible. And these are just a few of the signs normally from when I'm doing my videos. I'm telling you, once you have your awakening, once you have your born again moment, you will have an open dialogue with God. If you allow yourself to. If you allow yourself to get past the doubt and the, all of the sin that keeps us enslaved, you have to free yourself. You have to let yourself, give yourself to God. Let the Holy Spirit take your soul and take the wheel. It is miraculous. Don't lose hope because you're going out demanding to get a sign. Now, that's not how it works. It works the way you need it to work best for you so you can be the best servant of God. Now, I was telling my great friend last night, I've never found more freedom than when I was saved. And what did I do with that freedom? I gladly gave it away for service, for being a slave to God. Because I was a slave to sin, and Christ gave me freedom. And I found, what am I going to do with that freedom without you? Nothing. Without Christ, that freedom would just go to crap like it did before. I gave that freedom gladly away. And I've always been a freedom-loving person. I've always been a very independent person. But I've always been a lot of things that didn't work out so well for me now, did it? I'm not saying that freedom-loving is bad. It absolutely is good in our lives. But I'm telling you, the servitude to Christ is the greatest purpose you will ever find. All right, that's it for now. I love you all. God bless.